I'm really honoured to be here today. I was quite thrilled when Maylanne asked me if I would speak. You, Maylanne, were the first person that ever told me about deacons and diaconal ministers. I'm trying to remember the date. It was maybe 85, 86. You were working for the Urban Core Support Network, and you were in Winnipeg visiting various outreach and community ministries. And I remember spending a delightful time with you and hearing about diaconal ministry for the first time. Through that encounter, I also got to attend some Urban Core Support Network events. And those were very helpful, and my conversations with you were very helpful in gaining a kind of solid understanding of social justice ministry and a perspective from which to base the work that I was doing. So that has been my meeting with you that day was a very significant part of my life and ministry. A second significant event was the canoe trip we did on the Churchill River. It was a 6-day wilderness trip, grueling physically, if I recall, but breathtakingly beautiful. And I think in the physical challenge, I know for me, I discovered some inner spiritual strength that I didn't know I had. And as I was preparing for this, I was, as well as being really glad that Maylanne has come to be principal at the Centre for Christian Studies, I was also thinking very fondly of current and past staff and graduates and council members and friends that I've met over the number of years. So when you came in, you may have been given a spiral. If you didn't get one, don't worry about it. But if you do have, while I'm talking, you can be thinking of a blessing or a hope or a dream that you have for this new staff team for the Centre for Christian Studies. So you could write that on one side, and on the other, you could put one of the gifts or one or two of the gifts that you bring to this community of faith. And we'll do something with those later on in the message. So if through the summer you had been attending a church that followed the lectionary, you would have been listening to the great sagas of the early ancestors of the people of Israel as they searched to find their place physically and spiritually. One of those legendary stories is the Exodus, the escape from the oppressive rule of the Pharaoh, and the wilderness wandering under the leadership of Moses and Aaron and Miriam and others. I think a telling moment in that saga is when the people begin to grumble and complain bitterly against Moses. They're tired and hungry, in desperate need of fresh water to drink, and probably exceedingly anxious about what lies ahead. Despite the ghastly conditions of slavery, the terrible working conditions, and the horrific attempts at genocide under Pharaoh's rule, some of the people preferred the security of the familiar to the riskiness of freedom. And they complained and they plotted, if only we could go back, there we would be fed and sheltered. That story from ancient scripture has helped me to understand the immense difficulties in working for change, for transformation, for freedom, for living and working at the edges. People often feel safer with what is familiar, even when it is ultimately death-dealing for them. Transformation takes time and immense commitment and energy. 40 years is what was said that they spent in the wilderness. It's equivalent to 2 generations. It requires the perseverance of those who support and guide such transformation, and it requires strong connections to the God who, through the prophet Isaiah, says, I am the Lord. I've called you in righteousness. I've taken you by the hand and kept you. I've given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in the darkness. And of the psalmist who writes, "Happy are those whose help is in the God of Jacob, whose hope is in the Lord their God, who made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, who keeps faith forever, who executes justice for the oppressed and gives food for the hungry." We are living in a time when much that seemed stable and secure is shifting. Climate, political upheaval, concerns around energy sources and the environment. Events which 40 years ago we might not have heard about now flash into our sightlines every single day. The church faces many changes and upheaval. People have described the earlier times of major change and church transformations, difficult, challenging times, but the world has emerged, revitalized, and Christianity has rebirthed itself, renewed and re-equipped for its ministry to be servants of God in the world. Challenging times, yes, but also lots of opportunities and excitement in that possibility. And the Centre for Christian Studies has undergone many changes over the past few years. You, as staff and council and friends, have weathered these times with courage and determination, keeping the vision of diaconal ministry before you. Perhaps it has felt like a bit of a wasteland. Perhaps there have been a few who've complained. Some may have felt discouraged, but your faith and vision and perseverance has brought you through. And here we are at a new beginning, another turning point in the life of the Centre for Christian Studies. So an exciting time, full of lots of opportunities to reimagine how education can be, to reimagine how diaconal ministry can help us be servants in the world. It's a big change for Maylanne to uproot and come to a new position in a new town. And it's also a time of shifting and growing for the other members of staff and council. And I think of Anne and Ted and Mark and Scott and Liz. And our thoughts are with all of you as you begin to work together. What will this be like? How do we build a team? Challenging, but exciting. Diaconal ministry is the ministry of service in the world, of being God's agents, of being the signs of Christ's presence. It is often ministry at the edges, in uncharted territory, traveling with the people of God through sometimes wild and hard places. And the Centre, along with Anglican seminaries and the newly minted, as of yesterday, Sandy Soto Spiritual Centre, consistently engage in the formation of men and women equipped with gifts and skills for diaconal ministry. They are equipped to navigate transformational ministry, to support and build up other members of the body of Christ, so that together we can be the living, breathing, spirit-filled agents of God, the signs of Christ, the presence of the sacred in these difficult and edgy times. It's not easy to be living out one's ministry, even when shown a way of liberation for change, for the better, like the people in the wilderness. That stepping into the unknown is often seen as a bit too risky. And I'm sure that many of us, when we've tried to introduce changes in our churches or our communities, have found a great deal of resistance. I'm reminded of the many folks connected with diaconal ministry who've committed themselves to standing firm. They are like the servants in the passage from Luke who are alert and dressed for action, always watchful for the opportunities to welcome and receive the presence of the Holy One. In the Exodus passage, Moses, Aaron, Miriam, the elders, they are the keepers of the vision of liberation. They belonged in a covenant with God. In your story as the Centre for Christian Studies, the staff team and Central Council are the leaders whose ministry is to guide and lead and to equip the students so they can help build up the body of Christ. And today, you are covenanting together. In the Exodus saga, God sees the plight of the people and understands the dismay of the leaders. God provides manna and leaders. When they get tired of constant diet of manna, God sends quails. And God passes on the spirit of leadership to many elders, so that Moses is not the only one who is being given the challenge of leadership, but that is shared amongst the elders. In our story, all of us, staff, graduates, friends, council members, have an amazing array of gifts and skills which we can offer. We can provide that manna in the wilderness, the manna that feeds and nourishes the body and soul. So I invite you now to take a moment, and if you've had a chance to write something on your spiral, then share that with the people who are sitting beside you, just for a minute or two. And if you haven't yet written anything, now is your opportunity. So when the offering is taken up, I invite you to place your spirals with their messages of hope and vision for the center in the offering plate, and hopefully whoever is organizing that piece can sort them out and make sure that they get to the center so that the staff can enjoy those. In the passage from Ephesians, there is a vivid portrait of a healthy body, joined and knitted together by every ligament with which it is equipped, as each part is working properly, promotes the body's growth in building itself up in love. And I think that's what we are about today, is helping that to happen. The Centre for Christian Studies equips us to be healthy, living, breathing servants or agents of God, who in turn are called to build up God's people in the world. The goal, the promised land, to borrow that metaphor again, is the whole of earth, water and air that is healthy and clean. A planet filled with creatures and people who can live in balance and harmony, and a future that is just and caring and peaceful. And so as we covenant together, may this God who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes from it, who gives breath to the people upon it and spirit to those who walk in it, may that God journey with you, staff, students, council members, friends, and community. Amen.